problem with the healthcare system that is leaving half of the population behind. So 50% of the population are women, obviously, and we don't have enough data or funding for women's health. There are gaps around both those issues, as women have been only involved in clinical trials legally for the past 20 years, which means that for most of the drugs on the market, we still don't know how they impact women's health specifically. There is also a big funding gap, as only 11% of NIH budget goes to women's health. And that's quite a generous number too, because as we're going to see later on, a lot of that spending is not actually on women's health. But the two problems together create a big market gap, as if we lack data and funding, we cannot solve problems that women have. So a lot of very common diseases like polycystic ovarian syndrome and PCOS remain unaddressed. So going back to those 11%, as I mentioned, that is quite generous, and the majority of the money goes towards oncology, while only 1% goes to women-specific conditions, which include conditions that affect 1 in 10 women, so it's very common and widespread. So a little bit about my background, just to give you a background where I'm coming from and why I'm going to talk about reproductive longevity. I have been in the longevity field for most of my career. I knew that's what I wanted to do, so I did my PhD in biology of aging and reproductive health. So I've been focusing on ovarian aging and reproductive longevity. And after academia, I worked in VC and venture creation for a bit. And now I'm full-time in DeSci, working with AthenaDAO and AthenaDAO. AthenaDAO is not only working in reproductive longevity, but all of women's health. And not only women's health is a neglected field in healthcare, but also even in longevity field, it comes second to last in terms of startup funding, and even after pets, which is great for dogs, but not so good for women. In terms of stages of development, women's health hasn't even reached the valley of death yet, which is why we think a DAO model is great for us, and we can come in very early and support research projects in order to incubate them, acquire IP assets around them with IP NFT technology, and ultimately spin out companies from within the DAO and bring therapeutics to market. We use novel funding mechanisms, so on-chain technology for both IP assets, as I mentioned, IP NFTs and intellectual property tokens, as well as a token to run the DAO on and enable community-led decision-making. But apart from funding, AthenaDAO aims to be a global female-led movement to provide education and resources for women's health, because there is lack of information and a lot of disinformation in the space as well. Our vision is to be the leading decentralized global community that enables transformative and translational women's health research, starting from research and development, going into clinical data, and funding projects that lead to translation and therapeutics for women's health. We think that the DAO model is particularly useful for our case, as it connects our community to the researchers, and then the researchers to a new pool of capital from the blockchain space, as well as using tools from Web3 to facilitate transfer of IP rights and governance within the community. Also, Women's Health DAO is a unique opportunity because the model of BioDAOs works best for traditionally overlooked areas of science, that have a very strong community behind them and community that needs the solutions. So we fit exactly in that space. So I mentioned AthenaDAO targets all of women's health, but we can only do so one step at a time. So currently, we have a round open for endometriosis and polycystic ovarian syndrome projects. Next round is going to be on rare cancers for women. And the previous round was on ovarian aging and menopause, which is what I specialize in. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and our past round, which is completed now and has funded projects, included a public good women's health reproductive biology report that we published half a year ago. It's centered around the topic of reproductive longevity. So we've summarized the state of the field. We went to a number of conferences that are summarized in the review. And we interviewed a number of experts in the field and take their advice on what's wrong and what needs to be fixed and how can we do that. So if you're wondering why do we have to pay attention to that, women already live longer than men, so what do we want? They do live longer, but actually in poor health, and we see that lifespans are increasing. However, the age of menopause has not moved at all, which means that women are spending a longer time in poor health because menopause increases the risk of age-related diseases significantly. And we know that women's health span is directly related to ovarian age. We know that it's also related to lifespan because transplantation of young ovaries into old mice extend lifespan. We also know that ovaries age twice as fast as the rest of the body. However, we don't really know why. And the decline starts before you would expect it. It starts at 35 at a much faster pace. And if you go to a fertility clinic for an IVF as a 35-year-old woman, you will be termed a geriatric mother, which seems very strange because 35 is still perceived as young. The current solutions on the market are not really solutions at all because they address a very specific fertility issue. So if you go for an IVF procedure, you might benefit from IVF if you lack availability of oocytes, if they're not ovulated properly. However, if you go for an IVF and you have poor quality oocytes, there is nothing that can be done to help. If you go to an IVF clinic, it's often too late and there's nothing that can be done. And the problem there is that we're not doing anything to address underlying causes of ovarian aging. We're only treating symptoms. And that's where our first funding round for AthenaDAO comes in. We aim to tackle this project, and we have so far funded 2 very interesting projects on ovarian aging, one in Spain and one in the US. They focus on the role of senescence pathway, SIGA-STING, in ovarian aging, as well as the integrated stress response for ovarian follicle survival and growth. We have one more on the way in Singapore, so we have projects all over the world. This one is even led by a PhD student. She's in Brian Kennedy's lab, and she is looking at longevity drugs and how can they extend ovarian lifespan. Starting from C. elegans and progressing to higher organisms. So that's the core team behind it. Feel free to reach out to any of us. Laura Minkini, our core lead, and Ines, our ops lead, are tirelessly working to grow AthenaDAO, and myself and Stefano are on the science side, so reach out to us for any projects. So I want to thank also a bunch of our contributors, everyone's doing the work behind AthenaDAO. So what have we done so far? As I mentioned, most importantly, we funded 2 projects with IP NFTs on ovarian aging. We also did our Genesis token launch successfully. We have reviewed over 80 projects with 40 active contributors, and we have over 5,000 people that follow us on multiple channels and engage with AthenaDAO. We also have 1 stealth company underway, so that's going to be an exciting new year. And with that, the auction was completed, and currently there is no token supply, but we are going to have a publicly traded token next month. And just a brief announcement that we're looking for contributors. So ideally from more technical fields, from bioinformatics, robotics, computational biology, and machine learning, as well as oncology experts for our next round of project evaluations. And we'll be very interested to start a data project from within the DAO. So that's why we would want to connect with bioinformatics researchers that can help us with that. And if you're interested in working with us, please scan the QR code and connect on Discord. Thank you very much. Yeah, so the data project is something still under development, and we would want to have someone to actually run that. But what we want to do is find new ways to engage the community and let them participate if they want to donate data, if they want to undergo some like biohacking experiments, see how we can leverage the community beyond just governance and then voting on things. And potentially that would be then useful to connect with researchers and MDs and like integrate the whole ecosystem better, but nothing specific yet.
Is it a plan to like mine existing data as well?
Yeah, for sure. That'll be in the plan. If you know anyone, please recommend us.